Hi learners, I'm your instructor Steve Tamano on this topic, the theories of. So, in this topic, we will discuss about two of the five theories of first language acquisition of children. So, what are these two topics that we will learn? Those are the nativist approach and the cognitive theory. What are our objectives in this lesson? First, to understand and apply the nativist approach and cognitive theory on first language acquisition. Second, to understand the different principles of both nativist approach and the cognitive theory. And lastly, to find out the proponents or the people beyond these first language acquisition theories. So in this comic above, what do you think is our first lesson? Yes, you guessed it right. It is the nativist approach or the nativist theory. What are these concepts revolving the nativist theory? It states here that acquisition or language acquisition is innately determined. It means that we as humans are born with a built-in device of some kind that predisposes us to language acquisition. What does that mean? It only means that we humans are born with the talent or with the ability to learn language when we are born, as we grow up. Next, it says here that children are biologically programmed for language acquisition. So, when we say children are biologically programmed, children are born with the ability to learn language or acquire language by themselves. It means that in their gene or in their makeup as a human, they already have the talent or the ability to learn language. That is what it means. So who is the most common proponent of the nativist approach or the nativist theory? We have Noam Chomsky. He says that every child is born with a biological predisposition to learn language, any language. So Noam Chomsky says that every children, when you are born, you already have the ability to learn language. He also says that, or he came up with the idea of a language organ. So Chomsky says that as we are born as a child, we humans have this language organ. It is called the language acquisition device, or LAD in short. Additionally, he says that children have been observed to pick up grammar and syntax without any formal teaching in spoken language. It is easily seen in these children. If you watch children grow, you can already say that they know language, their first language. You didn't need to teach these children what they need to learn. Okay, by naturally, he says that children can learn language by themselves without you teaching them, without any formal teaching. They acquire it. That's what Chomsky says in the nativist approach. They seem to learn these fundamentals of their native languages purely from the input around them. What does this say? It says that these languages, when a children is born, it absorbs this knowledge of language, or this language. It absorbs them and it is processed through this language acquisition device that he says, our language organ, and as output, we already have acquired this language. We already know this language. We already spoke this language. So it only backs his theory that we have a language acquisition device. So what is this Chomsky saying that we have a language acquisition device? So what is a language acquisition device? A language acquisition device is the ability to distinguish speech sounds from other sounds in the environment. So speech sounds such as language, like a, e. So those are speech sounds that we humans determine from the language or the sounds that we hear from our environment, such as the sound of an animal or sound of a thing or that we heard from these animals. This language acquisition device is what determines it. It is what divides it from these sounds and says, oh, this is a human language. It is not an animal language. So we can learn it. This is language itself. So when a child hears its parents speak, and when there's other sounds that he hears, such as music from the background, he can understand that this sound coming from its parent as a language and not other environmental sound. Another language acquisition device is also an ability to organize linguistic events in various classes, which can later be refined. So the language acquisition device has an ability to organize linguistic events. What are these linguistic events? Linguistic events are the syntax, grammar that we humans learn already when we are a child, that we don't need to learn, or that we have innately learned. Okay? That's what it means. It also says here that knowledge that are only a certain kind of linguistic system is possible and that other kinds are not. It says that language is a linguistic system. It is innately known to human. It is imprinted to us. It is not. It will not determine other linguistic systems or other kinds. Okay. It also says that it is the ability to engage in constant evaluation of developing language systems. It means that this language we have acquired when we are children are constantly evolving. We constantly learn, okay? And it is through this language acquisition device that we have acquired language and that we have continued to develop it as we grow older. We also have, under the concepts of the nativist approach, is the universal grammar. What is universal grammar? Universal grammar is a set of innate principles and are adjustable parameters that are common to all human language. What does this mean? It says here that all human language is or does have a common point between them. This is what we call the universal grammar. These principles are aligned with each other, meaning that Chinese, English, and other kinds of language have these common principles or universal common thing about them that people already know. Okay, and it is common to all human languages. Universal grammar also focuses on the structural relationships rather than linear order of words. What does this mean? It focuses on what does this speech is for and not the order of the speech constructed. Okay, it means that it is after the context and not what the structure of the speech is pertaining to, or the language is. For example, your cat is friendly. The other is your cat friendly? See the difference? It is not after the order of the words in a sentence, but it is the context or the meaning beyond these sentences. And that is the universal grammar. So what have we learned? Children are born with a specific innate ability to discover themselves for underlying rules of a language system on the basis of samples of a natural language that they are exposed to. So the nativist approach says that children are already exposed to this language. That's why they learn, and it is through this innate language speech or innate language organ that they learn these languages when they were born, and then after the thing is their native languages. Language acquisition is something that happens to a child placed on a certain environment, not something the child does. Okay, it says here that language acquisition or language learning is happening, or it happens, or they acquire it, or it happens. They acquire language in their environment. Next, children acquisition of grammatical rules is guided by principles of an innate universal grammar which could apply to all language. Children's acquisition of knowledge is guided by these principles. What are these principles of universal grammar? We have learned it earlier. That is common to all language. That it is an evidence that there is a universal language that all human originate. And next, as you can see with our comic above, we proceed to next lesson. This lesson, it says that we have a cognitive theory on language acquisition. So what does cognitive theory have? Cognitive theory is proposed by a Swiss psychologist named John Piaget, placed that acquisition of language within a context of child's or cognitive development. It says that we acquire language. Piaget says that we acquired language along with our cognitive or mental development, because Piaget has this development stages or mental developmental stages of human. He proposed that, and along these developmental stages we have the language acquisition under the development or under the cognitive development of a human or a children. So what does John Piaget means? He argued that a child has to understand a concept before he or she can acquire a particular language form which he expresses that concept. What does this mean? What does this mean? Piaget says that a children need first to understand the concept of a thing such as language before learning it. Okay? For example, a child needs to learn numbers, so he needs first to learn about these numbers before understanding it and processing it and acquiring it in the process. That's how he acquired language according to him. So he needs first to understand the concepts of language before acquiring it at the process, and the output will be the language he used by then. A very good example of this is seriation. So what is seriation according to Piaget? Seriation is happening when there will be a point in a children's intellectual development when she or he can compare objects with respect to size. This means that if you give a child a number of sticks, he or he could arrange them in order of size. So what does this mean? Language acquisition is according to the intellectual development of a children. As a children learns or his intellectual ability develops, it is easy for him to learn it. For example, it says here that if you give a children a number of sticks, he'll eventually learn how to arrange them, or more likely, he knew sizes. Piaget suggested that a child who has not yet reached the stage would not be able to learn and use comparative objectives like bigger or smaller. So what does this mean? Piaget suggests that children are unable to learn some things if he did not learn it first, or the concept first. Piaget suggested that through cognitive development, children are able to learn language. Okay, that if children haven't reached this type of development yet, or this cognitive development yet, he cannot learn language, such as big or small, or through adjectives. Okay, so he is not able, or this child will not able to learn language. Another proposal of this cognitive theory is the object permanence. So what does object permanence mean? During the first year of life, children seem to be unaware of the existence of objects they cannot see. An object which moves out of the sight ceases to exist. By the time they reach at the age of 18 months, children have realized that objects have existence independently on their perception. Simply, it means that if children cannot see this object, they will not learn it, or they will forget about it. So it needs permanence. Okay, this permanence will bring them to acquire it. For example, the language, if they kept on experiencing it, or if their environment kept on they kept on being exposed to language, they eventually learn about it. Their mental capability will enable them to learn language. That's what it says. So if this language, for example, there are no people around this child when it is growing up, it is high likely that they cannot learn language. That's what cognitive theory proposes under the object permanence. It also, the cognitive theory draws attention to the large increase in children's vocabulary at around this age, suggesting a link between the object permanence and the learning of labels of objects. It means that the object permanence, for example, if a children have a toy and he kept on being exposed with this toy, and eventually he'll learn what is this toy name. So at the long run, he eventually acquires a number of toys, and in this number of toys he knew their names, thus resulting to its widening of the vocabulary, resulting to language acquisition. These names of objects are languages itself, thus resulting to language acquisition through cognitive development under the object permanence. So that will be all. Thank you very much. much for listening.